Hey guys, my name is Brandon and welcome to or welcome back to my YouTube channel. If you like what you see in here, you're more than welcome to hit the subscribe button so you stay notified every time I upload a new video. Okay, let's get straight on with today's video. Hey guys, and welcome back to the Sharing Thoughts podcast. I'm your host Brandon, and in today's podcast I'm actually speaking about podcasts because for me, podcasting has actually been quite a difficult thing over the last few months, and I think for me it's just difficult in terms of coming up with an idea, coming up with a topic of discussion, and then following through with that topic. So, for example, I am a university student, so I'm likely to want to speak about things to do with university. I'm pretty much coming to the end of my university experience. So, for me, it's sort of finding the next place to turn to and not get latched on to the same topic. And I think one of the things that makes me different from other people is that because I'm a content creator on as many platforms as I can be, trying to do as many different things as I can, I don't really know what I'm supposed to podcast about. And I think that's one of my, I guess, strengths, because I'm covering so many things in so many other different formats, and on so many different other platforms. It's difficult for me to work out, like I said, what I'm supposed to podcast about. Now, I do have some notes for today's podcast. So firstly and foremostly, what is a podcast and why do people do it? So from my understanding of what a podcast is, it is basically where you talk to yourself or you talk amongst a group of friends and you record the audio, obviously cutting out the bits that aren't necessarily good or bits that you don't think will go down well with the public, and just speaking about a particular topic or something that's gone viral in the news, or someone that's, I don't know, worthy of a story, or someone maybe that isn't worthy of a story, but you want to give them a platform anyway. And I think for me, a lot of people create podcasts because they don't like being on camera. So I like to think of a podcast as an alternative to a YouTube video. So they just sort of sit down, get a microphone, maybe even just record on your phone, whether that be just audio, whether that be audio and visual, but primarily sound, getting that sound, and then using that to sort of tell a story or speak about experiences with a particular topic, and then how that can benefit the public, how they listening to that podcast can then benefit from listening to those stories. So I've also got another note here, aims of a podcast and the different varieties of a podcast. So pretty much like I said, I think the main aim of people creating a podcast is to, one, get their voice heard, get their opinions heard, and actually have a different opinion and actually different views on a particular topic. So for example, there could be one group of people who may have a particular view on, I don't know, social media. So the people that maybe have put out negative things about it, they may want to do podcasts speaking about all the things that are wrong with social media, whereas someone like me or someone like a couple of my friends, they and me absolutely love social media. So we might come on a podcast and speak all the positive things about social media. So there are so many different things to speak about in so many different ways. And I think one of the main aims for podcasts is for people to just share their opinions without feeling judged, without feeling criticized, and without being critiqued on what they're saying. And then in terms of, like I said, I sort of touched upon this before, the different varieties of podcast are either just audio form. Some people like to do audio and video form. Some people like to upload things to like Anchor or Spotify or iTunes. Others prefer to upload their videos or sounds to YouTube. So if I go on to the next part of this podcast about podcasting, what is the best way to break into doing a podcast? So this is a question that I've asked myself a lot, and it's just been something that I've debated over the coming months, years. And actually, I think I wanted to do a podcast back when I was in like year 12, where I didn't actually know what a podcast was. I just knew it was a video, but without the video. So the sound, like a voiceover sort of thing. So if I was to go back to my younger self, or if there's anybody listening in and they want advice on the best way to break into a podcast, the best way to do it is just by going ahead and creating content, because I think you're more likely to get engagement and content by posting stuff that you're interested about, or just by posting stuff than actually not. And I think one of the things that I used to feel is that, oh, I'm not getting any views in my videos, or I'm not getting any listeners to my podcasts, I'm not going to be successful. Well, actually, I think that's one of the main reasons to continue doing that podcast, because you're not going to get numbers straight away. You're not going to get people listening to your stuff or watching your stuff straight away. So it's a matter of just building up that audience retention, and just building up that audience. Because like I said, at the end of the day, there are going to be a lot of people that are creating similar content to you. There's going to be a lot of people that are creating different content to you. And whether it's what you enjoy to start with, or whether it's just something that you're doing, obviously that will show in your podcast. And I think for me, one of the best things just about getting something started is that you then build yourself a platform, or potentially give yourself that platform for you to do well. Because actually you never know if that thing is going to lift off and be really, really good, or actually if it's one of those things that you don't really need to promote, but if you create content through that particular platform, you just do it for the benefit of yourself. And I think for me, that's what I'm going to be pretty much doing my podcast about. I've featured it on my main website. I've obviously done a couple of episodes about university. I did an episode that I was going to try and do a podcast every single day during this coronavirus situation, which hasn't exactly gone down very well. And obviously this episode is now about how to set up a podcast, why to do a podcast, and actually why podcasting is actually just so difficult to do. So yeah, there's some of the reasons so far on why you should do a podcast. Just being open-minded, just thinking of just somewhere to start rather than not doing anything. Just think of somewhere to start. And I think if you're like me and there are so many different topics that you want to talk about, or there are so many different things you want to talk about, just try and include them with a story that goes viral. So for example, if someone gets famous on something like TikTok, anything that they've done in their past, or anything that makes them unique, or working at their sort of backstory, that's the sort of thing I would challenge in a podcast and sort of go, right, so this person has X, Y, and Z in their life. They got famous from this video, blah, 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 blah. And then try and link in a topic of discussion such as social media or love life, or something that I've got a passion about that I can link in, because then it makes sense. And then people will know actually, oh, this guy has an interest in this particular topic, and therefore they'll want to continue listening to my podcast and see what else I speak about, or if I was to ever drop hints and messages and tips about that topic in the future. So the next point that I actually had on my list in terms of this podcast is, do you really need amazing equipment, especially if you're someone that doesn't have a lot of money? Now, I know personally, especially throughout the coronavirus situation, and actually before the coronavirus situation, I was never somebody that wanted to spend expensive amounts of money on equipment. And if anything, I'm one of those people that I like to have the limited items and the limited products. And to be fair, I don't like flashing any forms of money that I have. If I was to have money, I still wouldn't do that. I don't actually have money or enough. So for me, just sticking with the basic, sticking with the basic tools and the basic equipment is literally all I need. So for example, the notes that I'm making for this podcast have actually just been written up on notes on my iPhone. The microphone that I'm using is just a Blue Snowball, which is about 40 quid from Amazon. And the recording software, what I'm currently recording this podcast, is actually on Zoom meeting. So I'm recording it with a video, just so I can see myself. And then obviously I'm going to disable the video and just have the sound. And then moving on to guests and collaborations. I feel like this is something that I've tried to challenge so much over the last couple of months. And back in 2019, when I actually had the initial breakout of my podcast, and I was like, right, I'm definitely going to get some people on this podcast. I felt like it was a little bit rushed, that I was sort of messaging people, asking people if they wanted to be on the podcast. They were obviously suggesting topics and that sort of thing, but it just felt a little bit not genuine, a little bit like disjointed, and just a little bit, yeah, like I said before, just a little bit rushed. So I think for me, what I'm going to do in terms of my podcast is I'm just going to talk about anything. I'm going to talk about everything, as many things as I can do, whether it be social media related, whether it be stuff to do with my life, whether it be an update about, I don't know, something that I've done. And for me, that's the best way I'm going to go about creating my podcasts, because at the end of the day, I am my own voice. I will be the person who will or will not be able to give myself a platform. So I feel like if I am able to create and post content in as many different forms as possible, so videos on YouTube, my main channel, my second channel, podcasts, I'm not going to have a particular day, particular schedule, particular upload. I'm just going to sort of if I have an idea to podcast that maybe I don't want to do a YouTube video or I don't want to create an Instagram post, then I will just create a podcast about it in my own time. And again, a couple of tips, moving on to the best way to begin. So like I said, just being active on social media. I think one of the good things that links podcasting with social media is that you could potentially speak about and give opinions on the things that you see on social media. So for example, there are so many things recently, such as people, like I said, are getting famous from different apps, different text messages and different email communications that people are sharing online and things that are going viral. I have opinions on so many of those things, but now they're not relevant anymore. So I can't exactly bring those back up in conversations. So I think for me, it's just just a matter of being active on social media, all the different types, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, because there's so much different content that is generated and posted on each of those. And it's a matter of finding it at the right time, speaking about it at the right time, and then just getting that content out there for people to listen to, for people to see, and actually for people to go, oh, I didn't realize this person was going to give an opinion on this. I just thought this was a viral tweet that no one cared about and it's not relevant. Actually, someone's then remade it re-relevant. Another tip I would say is getting the inspiration from somewhere. So again, similarly, whether this is social media, whether this is friends and family, whether this is people just sharing their own thoughts, views, and comments on social media, just a matter of getting inspiration from somewhere. And yeah, using that inspiration to target a form of podcast content. Again, like I said earlier, just post content. I think that's one of the best things to do with podcasting. If you don't do it, you're not going to get the views and engagement because there's nothing to get the views and engagement on. And obviously, if you do it, you may not still get that engagement, but at least you're giving yourself the opportunity and that space in the market for your voice to be heard. Speak confidently and check the audio. Obviously, you don't have to be scared about being in front of a camera because it's just going to be audio based. You can do it in a room on your own like I'm doing now. And actually just speaking as confidently as you can. It just feels like you're having a conversation with yourself. I mean, to be fair, at the moment, I've actually just turned my video off. So all I can see at the moment is a picture of myself. So it feels like I am talking to myself, but at the same time, I know some of the things that I'm saying will and hopefully will benefit the people that listen to this podcast. Another tip is think about the actions you want people to take. So if you're talking about a particular issue on social media, do you want people to share that and give you the recognition that you deserve for giving your opinion? Not necessarily, but if they want to share your podcast, that's absolutely fine. If you're speaking about more of a difficult and more deep topic, do you want people to maybe go over and check those tweets or go over and check that Instagram post that you're talking about and actually, I don't know, get people to speak positively about something? If someone shares a quote about body positivity and your whole podcast is about that, they may go, oh, actually, yeah, I'll go check out that post. I'll go like that post. I'll go share that post. And then what you're doing is actively, not only you actively engaging, but also allowing others to actively engage in content on social media. And lastly, for this little section, and lastly, for the last little section of my podcast, I thought about having the 5 podcast question method. Now, this is something that I came up with a couple of months ago. Again, haven't really put this into practice yet because I haven't really got any guests to bring onto my podcast. But this is just something that I've thought about in terms of creating ideas and in terms of getting those initial ideas and the initial juice just flowing a little bit to help you, I don't know, relax. Because I think with podcasting, it doesn't necessarily have to be something you do regularly. It could be something you do once every 3 months, updating people in your life, updating people on the sort of situations that you're getting up to. And I think for me, it's just a matter of thinking about these 5 things, trying to relate them back to your life and trying to help people be inspired to create their own content, or whether they're inspired to, I don't know, maybe be a guest on your podcast, or they'll hear you and say, actually, I'd love you to be a guest on mine. So it's just a matter of, like I said, getting your voice out there, getting your opinions and voice heard. And then once you do that and break into the market, then that's pretty much it. You start building contacts, you start networking with people, and you start being listened to, which is something that I've always had a problem with. That there are a lot of things I have opinions on. There are a lot of things I have views on. And from a lot of people, it's usually just a matter of they listen, they ignore, and they move on with their life. So I think with something like a podcast, it's a matter of me being able to say what I want, how I want to say it, without any form of judgment, and then some people can engage, some people don't have to engage. But I know for me, I've got that thought and I've got those opinions out, and that's the main thing. So moving on to the 5 podcast question method. So for me, this is just something that I've made up. This is not necessarily something that works. It's not something that necessarily doesn't work, but I think it's good for an introduction podcast, whether introducing yourself or getting a guest to introduce themselves. So it goes as follows. Firstly, think about 5 topics that you're interested in. So when doing a podcast, obviously you can talk about anything and everything, but if you think about 5 main subtopics or 5 things that you're passionate about, you can at least guide your podcast to go in the right direction. So for example, for myself, I would pick things such as social media, helping other people, student life or university life, or anything to do with education, content creating. So again, it's sort of relating to social media, but it's in itself, it's its own category. And then maybe just like life, motivational sort of quotes and sayings and that sort of thing, because that's a sort of path that I've ended up going down in my life at the moment, that there's a lot of things that I am passionate about giving advice on, and there's a lot of things I'm passionate on motivating and inspiring other people on, whether that be my personal story or whether that just be just things that I've experienced and maybe have done wrong, or things that I've experienced and I've done really, really well. Just sharing those experiences with people to help them do the best that they can do in any particular topic. So for me, the first thing is just thinking about those 5 subtopics that you're interested in. Like I said, it guides you in terms of your first podcast, but actually it will allow you to think more deeply about those 5 topics rather than trying to talk about everything, which again isn't a bad alternative to talk about anything and everything, but those 5 topics will be the main pointers, I guess, of each podcast that you do. So number 2, so going down to 4. So 4 skills or talents that you have. So as an individual, everyone has talents, everyone has skills. Everyone obviously has things that they're not the best at. So just think about 4 of the skills and talents that you have as an individual that make you different from other people. So I think for me, number 1 is just being open-minded and being confident within my own thoughts, which isn't something I used to have. And it used to be something I used to be very, very scared and skeptical about, in terms of if I was to say something and someone were to judge me straight away, I would never open my mouth again about that topic or about that opinion. I would just sort of let it slide. So I think for me, being confident in what you think, being confident in what you say, and just being confident in how you feel about a particular topic, whether it may offend people, whether it may make you lose friends, everyone has their thoughts and opinions, and that's obviously one of the things that I think about. Number 2, confidence in terms of public speaking. Again, for me, isn't necessarily something that I used to be good at, but over the last years, I've gone to all sorts of different events, networking places, I've met so many different people, and that is skill number 3, being able to network. So again, public speaking, networking with others, they sort of link up quite well together. And the main aspect in terms of networking is, like I said, going to all these different events, meeting people that I wouldn't necessarily have met if I didn't have that initial confidence. So again, it's the confidence, it's the being able to public speak, which then leads to me being able to network. And I think a skill and a talent is being able to multitask, and obviously create content, which again, those two sort of go together, that multitasking on different content creation, whether that be podcasting, YouTube videos, filming stuff, being filmed for stuff, doing photo shoots, whether I'm the photographer or the model. It's that sort of thing. So a couple of those things happening simultaneously. Number 3 is thinking about 3 amazing people that you know. Again, if you start your introduction podcast with this, you can not only then shout those people out, give them the link to the podcast and say, look, I think you're an inspirational person. I think you're an amazing person. Take a little listen to this. But actually you get to think, why? Why do you think those people are amazing? How can you be on that same level as them? And obviously, how is their journey inspirational? How has their journey got to you so much that they're, to you, an amazing person? So I think for me, it's pretty much got to be anyone and everyone that I get in contact with. There's so many different creatives that I meet up with, so many photographers, models, those sorts of things. I think number 1 has to be Natasha Law, sorry. Her name is pronounced Lau. It's pronounced Law, but it's spelled Lauer. So she's a model. She works in a bowling alley. She's a makeup artist. She does all sorts of different art-related stuff on her face. And she's one of those people that actually has been self-shooting quite a lot during this coronavirus period. And she's also one of those people that has taught me quite a lot about myself. And in terms of gaining that confidence, not being scared of the camera, the different variety of poses that you can do to make your photos better, the sort of the model face, which it comes across as like being moody, but it's just the face that you pull because too much emotion isn't necessarily good. So I think she's one of those people that she's very, very motivational in terms of that. And actually on social media, she gets so much good engagement with her content because what she posts is good content. So I think for me, she's definitely one of those three. I think somebody else obviously has to be my auntie and my nan. I know that's two other people, but I think just family in general. I don't really speak to my parents, and pretty much the only connections that I've got left in my family that I speak to are my nan and my auntie. So my auntie is my nan's daughter. And I think those two have just been really, really inspirational as well. Just sort of, if I said, oh, I want to do this, I want to have a go at that, they've motivated me, they've pushed me on. Although at some points in my life and at some things that I do, my nan sort of raises an eyebrow, or she's happy that I've done something and she's proud of me for doing something, but the journey to get there, or when I talk about it too much, she sort of just, I don't know, shrugs it off and moves on to something else. I think apart from that, the support has pretty much been there the whole time. And I think for me, I don't know, I think they're probably the main people. And I think I would say Daisy as well. So Daisy Maskell, one of the girls I actually went to primary school with and secondary school, she sort of went from being this, I don't know, young, like girly girl into, I don't know, geography, history, maths, all those sorts of subjects. She dropped out of AS levels. So she did AS, dropped out, didn't do her A levels. She ended up doing all sorts of different weird experiences in the media, being in music video extras, being on TV. And I remember the night I called her up and I was like, oh my God, Daisy, I didn't realize you were on TV. And she's like, yeah, it was a paid thing. It was all staged, that sort of thing. And now she's presenting probably the biggest radio station in the UK, Kiss FM. So the fact that she's gone from just this ordinary girl at school and she knew she wanted to be successful, she lost friends along the way. That got her even closer to her mum and her sister. But yeah, she lost so many people on the way that she thought were her friends, clearly weren't. And now that she's doing successful, they now want to come back into her life. So it's then thinking about that on the other side, that these are all amazing people, but how many people have they had to lose on their journey, and how many people are trying to get back into their life now because they're successful? And I think that's something I'm always going to have at the back of my mind, that I'm obviously going to keep making friends, keep building connections, keep meeting new people. But if it gets to a point where old people start wanting to come back into my life, then I'll sort of feel, right, are you here because you want to be a friend? Or are you here because now I'm doing well and now I'm in a good place? You sort of want to just jump on the bandwagon of my success in order to pursue your career. So again, that's just something to think about. But in terms of those people, and it's mainly girls as well, because I do have a lot of guy friends, but I think it's easier for me to connect with girls because they understand me, I understand them. And yeah, I didn't really think about that. I know a lot of my friends are female, but that's what I'm hoping to improve in the future. Obviously, continue getting those connections with amazing women, but also try and build up those connections with guys as well. So Tasha, Nan, Auntie Daisy, obviously Sophia. She's been there since day one. She's one of the girls I met at tennis through a mutual friend. And she's pretty much stuck by me by like every single step of the way of my university journey. Through my gap year, we were on phone calls, all that sort of thing. So I think for me, she's another one of those amazing people. And again, all of those sorts of views and opinions and stuff, talking about these amazing people, they're amazing things to have in a podcast, and potentially even message those people and say, right, I think you're an amazing person. Can we speak about blah, blah, and blah? Or what do you want to talk about? And get them on a podcast. The next thing is thinking about 2 achievements that you've had. So for me personally, there have been so many things that I've done that there's a lot of things I'm happy that I achieved. There's a lot of things I did just because I felt like I had to achieve something different from other people. So I think as part of this 5 questions thing to think about, just 2 things, 2 amazing things you're glad you achieved, or actually what 2 things make you stand out from the crowd, 2 things that make you different from everybody else. So that's pretty much it in terms of that one. I think for me, it'd be things like completing my Gold Duke of Edinburgh's award, completing university, because I've only got like, I don't know, 1 little module left to go, and then I can pretty much hand it in a couple of days' time. So I would say that. Being able to take care of myself, again, similarly to finishing university, just over the last 3 years, how much I've grown in confidence, how much I've grown in like caring about myself, thinking about myself and putting myself first. because I do still think about other people. I still do put other people at the top, but at the same time, it's my future that I need to be thinking about and bringing people along with me on my future, not me being part of other people's futures because they're wanting to live their future. It's me first, and then everyone else can sort of follow on from me. And last but not least, just one thing you want to achieve for the future. So one goal, one aim, one aspiration, one thing that you haven't done that you maybe want to do, or one thing that you're thinking about always doing and eventually go and do it. So I think for me, on the day that I'm recording this podcast, on the 3rd of May 2020, currently only just turned 22 years old, but I am 22 years old, I would absolutely love to write myself a book about me. Now, this is something that I actually attempted a couple of years ago, sort of getting like an introduction section and getting a bit of a contents page going. But I think I'm just one of those people that I haven't necessarily experienced that much in life yet to write a book about the life. But I think once I have finished university completely, it's definitely something I want to think about doing more in terms of summing up my university life. So I think if I was to do a book, I could sum it up from beginning of my life, from the youngest I can remember of myself up until the end of my university life. And then sort of that would be the book. Whatever happens in my future life, I will just continue documenting through blog post or podcast or video content and that sort of thing. But I wouldn't necessarily need to make a second book unless the first one did so well, or unless people were really interested in me, then that's when I would do another one. But that is one of my goals for the future. There's so many other things I want to achieve, but I think for me, that is probably the main one. And then the last little thing about thinking about podcasts, if we go back to the thoughts about podcasts, just think about having an intro, think about having an outro, and think about branding yourself in the best way that you can. So luckily for me, I've had a brand name, Is That Brandon, for the last, I don't know how many years. And it all just stimulated from me walking past people in school or me walking past people in the street that I recognized. And they would just be like, is that Brandon? And I used to just be like, yeah, it is Brandon. Or they used to be like, yeah, it is. So I was like, actually, you know what? That might as well be my brand name and my quote. Is that Brandon? ... Yes, it is. So yeah, I think in terms of a podcast, as with any social media, as with any platform, just think about having an intro, whether it's a hello, welcome back to my podcast, or a pre-recorded intro that you just sort of add in before the beginning. And again, same with the end, sort of like a thank you for listening. Don't forget to do this, this, and this. Follow me on my social, ... Either record it every time or just have one that you just put at the end of the podcast. And then that branding. So I don't know, the different colors you'll use for the logo, whether you're going to upload your podcast to your YouTube channel, whether you upload the podcast to a podcast channel or a podcast platform, for example. People upload podcasts to all different places. But for me, I'm sticking to Anchor FM. It's one of those things that it's like a secret mission. It's just me sort of testing the waters, seeing if I speak about particular things and people are listening and people are engaging, will they want more? And if so, then I may branch my podcast out to my YouTube channel, or I probably won't do that, to be fair, because my YouTube channel is for video content. My second YouTube channel is for reaction videos, gameplay stuff, extra random stuff that I'm never going to put anywhere else. And then my podcast is obviously for my podcasts. So yeah. So in terms of the intro, the outro, the branding, and then obviously where you're going to share that content. And lastly, but not least, pretty much going back to one of my first points, just get that content out there. You don't have to edit it to the best of your ability. You don't even have to edit your podcasts. I pretty much don't even edit my podcasts anymore. I feel like if I say and if I cough and if I sneeze and if I don't know, break wind, for example, it's all just natural of being a human being. And actually, I would rather keep those things in because it shows that I am genuine, I am real, and that I don't need to edit my voice or my content in order for me to be accepted by society. So I am just one of those people. And it's the same with my social media pictures, that I may brighten a picture slightly, or I may put a tiny little filter on just to cover a few spots or whatever. But in terms of editing content, I don't edit pictures that I take. I don't edit pictures that I take of myself. And yeah, in terms of videos and stuff, I only edit it to a point. If I cut out, I don't know, rude things that I might have said whilst filming, or inappropriate things that, I don't know, it might have just been for a bloopers for myself or something like that. So for me, yeah, I limit the amount of editing that I do, because I want to keep it as genuine as I can. So yeah, that last little tip, pretty much just get that content out there. Like I say, it doesn't have to be like professional standard. It may get professional standard. You may be a perfectionist. I most certainly am. But at the same time, I'd rather get that content out first, build that platform for myself first, potentially get a team of people to work alongside me. And then once I've got the platform, then yeah, then I'll do everything 100% perfectly. No shadow of a doubt, I would do that. And then I'd use my money more wisely, maybe to upgrade my software or upgrade my microphone, or pay the people that are helping me create my content. Because at that point, I would then be in a content creating business, which is something that I am hoping to go into. I am hoping to fully create content for different types of social media or for companies as a full-time job. But I think for now, being a mentor, being a student employability advisor, so helping people with their CVs and their cover letters and that sort of thing, that's sort of the path that I feel like I'm going down at the moment. And obviously in terms of podcasting, I do hope I get back onto it properly. I do hope that I can get content out, whether it's every day, whether it's every week, whether it's a couple of months, just sort of to update people on my life, mainly, to speak about things that are going viral or that are hot topics on social media, because actually that will then get me more clicks. People will go, oh, who's that? Why is he speaking about this? And then it'll link to my social media, and then people might message me and all this sort of stuff. So for me, why create podcasts? Because it's just another platform where somebody might notice me. It's not something that I want to do full time. Podcasting was never something that I even envisioned myself of doing, but a lot of people say, why do you do it? And actually, why even put yourself out there? For me, it's just another platform that if someone stumbles across it, that's great. So yeah, if you did enjoy this podcast, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Obviously, you can check out my YouTube channel. You can check out my other social media. I believe my main website is also linked on this podcast somewhere. If not, my main website is isthatbrandon.wordpress.com. Nice and easy. And all the different links and all the different pages that you may find relevant or interesting are all linked on the main page. So yeah, it's been weird recording this podcast, and it's been weird looking at my face for the last, I don't know how long, but I hope you enjoyed, and I hopefully will see you on another podcast. So until next time, thank you for listening, and goodbye.